Welcome to the Australian Hiker Podcast, Australia's longest running hiking podcast, downloaded over 1.2 million times worldwide and providing you with an Australian perspective on all things hiking. We're your hosts, Tim and Jill Savage, coming to you from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country.
In this week's episode 322, brought to you by the Adventure Gene, we catch up with hikers Natalie and Pete Cornford to talk about their recent adventure on the Lycian Way in Turkey. We hope you enjoy. If you'd like to help support Australian Hiker and this podcast, there are a couple of ways that you can help us out. Firstly, by subscribing on your podcast host of choice so that each episode is available as soon as it's published. And if you have the opportunity, leave us a 5-star review. Another way to support us is go to the Australian Hiker website at www.australianhiker.com.au and click on the Support Us page and buy us a coffee. You can do a one-off donation or become a monthly supporter. All donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue producing this podcast and blog. Now let's get on to today's episode. Recently, we caught up with Australian hikers Natalie and Pete Cornford to talk about their adventure on the 509-kilometre Turkish walking trail, the Lycian Way. Located in the northern Mediterranean, this trail has a lot to offer, including ancient Turkish cities, World Heritage sites, and coastal vistas, to name a few. If you go to the show notes for this episode, you'll be able to see some images from Natalie and Pete's trip, as well as some helpful resources. Natalie, Pete, thanks for taking the time to chat with us about your recent adventure on the Lycian Way.
Thanks for having us, Tim. I'm excited about it.
Now, before we talk about your walk, tell us a bit about yourself and your hiking background.
Okay, well, we've done quite a few multi-day walks now. Our initiation started back in 2012. We did a yoga retreat in the Asturias near Oviedo in Spain. That was a hiking and yoga retreat, and the hosts that we stayed at were Camino specialists. Well, they were a company that provided tours. So that was our introduction. So it really piqued our interest. And then we started in 2015. We did we launched into our first multi-day hike, which was the Camino, the full Camino Francais. So we really jumped in. We jumped in boots and all. Then we did the coast to coast. We loved it. We fell in love with the whole concept. So we did coast to coast in UK the next year. And then we went back to a Camino. We went from La Puy de Andalay to Saint Jean, and then we did the Primitivo, which I spoke about before. We've done Annapurna, and then a couple of years ago we did Tour de Mont Blanc. And in the meantime, we've done a few Australian. We've done the Cape to Cape, Great Ocean Road, the Maramarang, and Light to Light, and then Queen Charlotte and Able Tasman in New Zealand. So we've done, we've done a few anyway.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And I was going to say, it's a good start to do the Camino Frances as your first really long walk. So well done on that.
Yeah. I know you're that's on your bucket list. I know.
One of the previous episodes, we did the Way of Geneva, the Via Gebonensis, and I'm tempted now to start the Camino Frances from Geneva and just add the extra 350 kilometres into the trip. So it's really tempting. I figure while you've paid for the airfares in a year, you might as well take the time.
Exactly. I'm hearing you.
It's very well set up for it too. There's places to stay, or gîtes and albergues along the way, and not too far between villages. Yeah, I'm sure you'd enjoy it.
Okay, no, that's good. Now, with so many hikes on offer around the world, why did you decide to do the Lycian Way?
Well, I'm usually the driver of the adventures. When we come back from one, I'm usually on the plane home thinking about the next one. So after Mont Blanc, I think we probably needed 12 months off. That was a big trip because we did a lot of other travelling at the time. So, but then I started to think about what we wanted next. I was probably thinking maybe the UK, but when I started, I really liked the warm weather, or we both do. So we looked at the UK. We've done, as I said, we've done the coast to coast, but lots of rain in the UK. So I started looking around, and I'd really never heard of the Lycian Way much, and so it popped up, and as I was,
it looked
Googling, it looked warm, it looked
sunny.
beautiful, sunny. I'd been to Turkey. I'd only been to Istanbul. Peter hadn't been, but we were keen to go back to Turkey. I was, and so we thought, okay, let's give that one a go. So we did.
Yeah, it is often hard. I mean, there's the things like the Camino and the Tour de Mont Blanc, which people probably recognise or recognise more than anything else. And then you've got a lot of these. And again, it's not. I'm not saying this in a bad way. These secondary walks that are really good walks that people just don't seem to know about.
No, well, that's right. I mean, the Turkish people haven't caught on like the Spanish people that, walking holidays are very viable for the country and the countryside, but
particularly rural communities.
Yeah, rural communities. But, maybe in 10 years or so they will, but that was why we decided.
Now, was this walk planned to be part of a larger holiday, or were you mainly there to do the walk?
Look, we were mainly there to do the walk, but we did incorporate seeing a little bit more of Turkey, and we wanted a bit of R&R after the 540K, so we sort of planned to do a week on a Greek island as well, just for a bit of sun and swimming and relaxing. So, yes, it was part of a bit bigger holiday. So.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. In relation to the track itself, I mean, it always varies. I mean, the official distances varies quite often to what you actually do. So I think going online, the Lycian Way seems to be the official distance is 509 kilometres, but you said you ended up doing about 540. Is that right?
Oh, look, we didn't count it. We just saw somewhere it said 540,
yeah.
and I didn't actually add up the amount of kilometres we did.
Yeah, no, and I think they were. I'm looking online. They look like they're making some changes and some improvements. So again, it's a walk that they seem to have called on that people like to do. So that they seem to be doing some additions there to make things great for people to go through and do. What were your expectations prior to starting the trip? I mean, did you have any preconceptions of, you mentioned that it looked like it was warm, but did you have any preconceptions about what you thought the trip was going to be like and what rural Turkey was going to be like?
Yeah, I sort of did. I thought from reading some of the literature and stuff on it that it was going to be fairly challenging. Seemed to be quite a bit of elevation gain and fall on most days. I expected from looking at photographs and that it was going to be visually spectacular, and it was. The culture was very, very different to Western Europe and Australia, for that matter, and it was as well. And there'd be a lot of history on the walk, and it was all of those things.
Looking at some of the images on this is a coastal walk mainly, or is it coastal and inland Turkey?
It does track basically along the coast. There are variants in route that go off. There's a lot of forest as well, but it tracks reasonably close to the coast most of the way.
I must admit, my father was a diplomat in my childhood, and I'm used to the Mediterranean area. And one of the things that really shocked me was I had a couple of hours spare, so they took me down to the local beach to swim, and it looked spectacular, but it was freezing cold. But when you got down to the Greek islands, it was quite nice. Did you do much swimming at all, or did you have much opportunity to do that, or it's not really something you're into?
No,
we're very much into
the
Mediterranean and warm water and swimming. And there were several opportunities to swim along the way.
And we did, and the water was beautiful.
Okay.
The water was...
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I must admit, it's as I said, it's an area with a lot of history, and it's if you've got the opportunity and you're not on a time frame where you've got to go, it's always good to have the ability to stop for an hour or two or half a day and spend some time on the beach and then keep on going.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Now, onto the Lycian Way trip itself. Let's start with the logistical aspects. Was this a self-guided trip or was it part of an organised group or an organised process?
Well, we were self-guided, but having said that, it was organised through a company, a Turkish company that did that sort of thing. So we knew where we were staying every night. We knew that our breakfast and our evening meal was organised for us. So even though we would get the map for the day and off we went, but so it was, as we said, self-guided but organised.
Okay, now you mentioned breakfast, and I'll jump to another question through here since you've mentioned it. So you mentioned breakfast and an evening meal was organised. What did you do for lunch?
Look, the first couple of days we asked our accommodation, which that was part of it. You could ask your host if they would pack you a lunch, which we did for the first few days because there wasn't any infrastructure that we were near. But we're not real big stop for lunch people. We probably just like snacks and some fruit. So as we got along the way that we were a little bit in a few towns, we would just get some snacks and nuts and fruit for the day, and really that was it. And then we just wait till our meal, which was when we got into the place that we were staying. So first few days, yes, but we tend not to do that after a while, did we?
Yeah, we just snack a lot.
Yeah, we just snacked, really. We're not huge, big, I love our breakfast, but have some trail mix and then some fruit and things to keep you going, and then, evening meal at night.
So what's a typical breakfast in Turkey?
Well, it's exactly the same every morning, but it's delicious. So it's some sort of egg, so it would be boiled or omelette or scrambled egg. Then there would be olives, tomato, cucumber, bread,
honey
and jams. Beautifully presented. No matter where you were, it was beautifully presented and fresh. So much fresh. Not a lot of processed, except for the bread, obviously, and cheese with that too. So it was pretty much the same breakfast, except if you were in a hotel, which was a few times, which was obviously a buffet breakfast, but beautifully presented, and a real treat, wasn't it? Breakfast.
And now, what about dinner? What's a typical dinner like in Turkey?
Oh, it varies depending where you are. It could be some sort of meat, chicken, or maybe lamb, maybe goat. Salads. It might be like some sort of stew. Soup is really big. They're lentil soup. Lentil soup with lemon.
Pretty much a lot of nights with lentil soup to start.
Yep.
Breads, hearty, fresh, home cooked,
and plenty of it. And I mean, we stayed in a lot of pensions, which were family run, so everything was home cooked. It was, and as we said before, non-processed. It was wonderful.
Okay. Did you have the ability to stop at little cafes or little restaurants along the way, or it varied?
A lot of it is through, I guess, the equivalent to our national parks and that, and there wasn't a lot of cafes or little towns along the way.
I think one. I think it was that day that we stopped for the orange juice where we met the Englishman. I think there was one town that we walked through during the day. Not at all. You would often end up in a little town, but not walk through, no. So not like the Camino
where you walk through a town every 5 to 10K. Yeah. No, you would walk all day and not see anybody else and not go through a town.
Okay. Now, speaking of not coming across anyone, was it a busy trail, or were there many other hikers doing the trip, or it was few and far between?
It varied. We walked the trail from Antalya towards Fethiye, which is sort of reverse direction to the guidebook. And initially, you might see one or two walkers during the day. Some days you would see nobody. Plus, we walked at the very end of the season too. It was starting to get quite warm. But the closer we got to Fethiye, the more people we saw on the trail.
Yeah, no, it's always hard. I mean, a lot of people like trips where they see lots of other people. A lot of people also don't like having more solitary trips, but I mean, I think there's advantages and disadvantages to both.
Oh, completely.
Agreed. The Camino is very communal and
Very social.
very social, and that's you meet very wonderful people. This is
not
more solitary,
Yeah, I would think so.
but equally as beautiful and
Very
enjoyable.
different. Very different. Very different than a
Now, accommodation-wise, you mentioned a lot of little family-run businesses. Was that the typical accommodation for you, or were you said you were staying in hotels for a couple of nights?
Yes, mostly there was a few in the bigger towns. It was usually a hotel, and we had 2 rest days in that time, and they were in sort of hotels. But I would think predominantly pensions. Yeah, so a few hotels, but predominantly the little family-run guest houses, I guess you would call them.
Yeah.
What's the English language ability of the on the trail there?
It varied significantly.
Yeah, mostly not a lot of English spoken.
Yeah.
Children and younger people, a little bit more English than their parents.
Google Translate.
And
Okay.
spoken words like 30% of communication. Like there's a lot of pointing and
as long as you do it in a good natured way, and you learn the please, thank you, and good morning, and people are happy that you're having a go, I think.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. What about the water situation? So I'm guessing you would have topped up with water before you left your accommodation in the morning. But were you able to carry? Did you carry your water for the day, or were you able to top up with streams or spigots along the way?
We carried. We was take water with you every day, and we typically take 2.5 litres. If it was going to be particularly long, we tend to use bladder system, Natalie and I.
Yeah.
So that would be full, and we might take another 2 500ml bottles with us. And there were a couple of days that by the end of it, we were out of water. The last 2 or 3 Ks, there was no water.
But we were okay.
There were streams, freshwater streams, and that along the way, particularly in our first week, I guess, through the mountains from Antalya to Chirali, maybe.
But also lots of what they called fountains.
Yeah.
Which people filled up with. We never did, but I was probably not going, but we never had to, and that's what they were for, these fountains.
Yeah, and we did have like purification tablets. We didn't take
well, we didn't use those.
We didn't use them, or we didn't use we didn't take a water filter.
No. The water situation was fine. There was no problem with the water situation.
And did you use a guidebook on the trip, or how were you keeping track of direction and where you were going?
There is a universal guidebook that an English-Turkish lady called Kate Clow wrote, but we were going the opposite way to the guidebook, so that was a little bit trickier. But we would get from the girl that was organising the trip a weekly lock map file every day, and so we used that. And Peter ended up buying the weekly lock app, and then we backed it up with the Strava. So yeah, that's what we used.
Okay, all right. And the guide. So you're saying it's an English guidebook, was it, or an English language guidebook?
Yes.
Okay.
It was written, I think, in
2000.
In 2000, it's not new. She hasn't done a new version of it,
and it's quite hard to come by too in English.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we bought a second-hand copy from somewhere.
Yeah, that's often the way, isn't it? Someone does it, and all of a sudden it's gone out of print, or the author's not doing it anymore, and you've got to wait for someone else to pick it back up again.
Yeah,
I think she's been asked about doing another guidebook, and she said everybody uses GPX files now, so there's no real point to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm a big fan of online or on phone electronic GPX or far out or something like that. But I do like the guidebook because the guidebook's often doing things and talking about, hey, here's some historical information, or there's a nice old building here, and that's the sort of stuff you don't often pick up on the map, on the electronic maps.
No,
I agree 100%. Like, by reading the guidebook, even though we started at the back of it and worked to the front of it, there were a lot of tips about culture and ruins that you're going to see along the way that you may have walked past or not had any sense of the history of it unless you'd read the guidebook.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's good. Now, in relation to gear, was there any special gear that you bought that's not classed as stock standard? I'm assuming you probably used tracking poles, but you may not have. And what about things like stove? Did you bother with a stove, or you were just relying on accommodation?
No, we didn't need anything like that. No, just anything you would take out for a day walk. Usually, first aid kit. I don't particularly like poles myself, but I took them. I carried them for the 500 odd kilometres and never used them once. But
I thought you should have.
Probably a couple of times I should have, but that's just that's my personal preference. Peter used them.
Yeah, I used them, but not all the time. Descending, going uphill once or twice, but not a lot.
But that's just my personal preference. I'm not a big pole user, but probably most people would.
We walked with two other people, and they use poles quite a bit of the time. But no special gear, like normal safety gear that you take.
Good shoes.
Good walking. Just use shoes.
Yeah.
Sorry, now when you say shoes, trail runners or hiking shoes, what were you wearing there?
Hiking shoes, yeah.
Peter has the good old Moabs.
Yep.
And I use Salomon, so that's just, again, our preference.
So I would say, like, the trail conditions, too, in places they're not very refined. You're walking over a lot of limestone up and down. It is in places very tricky to find a path and a way down through. There's a lot of rock slides. There's a lot of bare rock and very rough track. The Moabs were great shoes, and
so you would need really good shoes.
But after that, that's their last trip. They were here before they went, and they're not going anywhere else.
Yeah, no, I've done that. We went to South America a number of years ago, and apart from the fact that I trod through some really fine, silty sort of mud. I thought, no, I put them in the bin at the hotel and wasn't going to bring them back to Australia again. I knew this was going to be their last trip, and I thought, yep, saves a bit of weight on the way back. So.
Yes, mine ended up in a bin in Fethiye too. So.
Mine came home, but
yeah.
Natalie's were in the bin.
Yeah, I think the other thing as well, I've been in a couple of situations where I'm thinking, biosecurity going to take these when I come back home again. So best off leaving them there and time for a new pair of shoes.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean they really only have a shelf life of
a few thousand
Ks anyway, really, don't
they? Yeah, no, that's good. What sort of size packs did you carry? Were you carrying a larger day pack or a full pack?
But we used 50 litre packs before. We had Natalie has smaller, and I have smaller day packs. But our luggage, because we went through a company, was transferred onwards. But we'd only see it every 3 or 4 days. So in reality, we needed it, like the pack weighed 2.5 kilos, and you've got 2.5 kilos of water, and then you need clothes and toiletries and stuff like that for the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So the 50 litre pack, while never full, was a good choice. We had it already, so we took them with us.
No, I know. I know a lot of the companies, a lot of the commercial companies, like you to carry a 50-litre pack, and providing it's not one of the really heavy-duty ones, you can often scrunch them down, and they end up being quite trim if you're not going to fill it up. And if you do want to fill it up, you've got the option of doing that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to carry it.
Well, ours are quite. I mean, they're a great pack, and they're comfortable anyway. So it was good to have some comfort, even though it wasn't chock-a-block full.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my day pack would have been just a bit too small, and probably that was a little too big, but maybe 40 would have been. That we just didn't have that, so we didn't bother buying another one.
No, that's fine. And what about sleeping bags? Were you carrying sleeping bags with you, or again, were you just relying on bedding at your accommodation?
No, just bedding. We didn't need even liners or anything. Everything was.
I had it like an emergency bivvy with it, but no sleeping bags because we had accommodation booked.
Yeah. Now I was going to say, are you able to camp on this trip, or is it really as a homestay or a hotel sort of stay option?
No, absolutely. It's not most, but a lot of the people, especially younger people, were camping. So that is quite set up for camping. But having said that, we don't know much about because we didn't do it that way. But there was a lot of people camping.
You can wall camp along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
But probably particularly Eastern European people, Romanian, Polish, Russian, were.
But for us to take a tent and all the gear,
on 64 on past sleeping on hard ground, mate. I'm having a hot shower at the end of the day and sleeping in bed.
For 28 days anyway. Overnight okay, but not for 28 days.
Yeah, I think that's one of those sort of things. It's, the old mentality of, you've got to sleep in a tent and you've got to sleep on the ground. And that's fine. There are people who love doing that. And there are also people who want to take it a bit easier and maybe not go as fast. And that's fine. Either option is a good option.
Yeah, we would do it for a night or two, but it's, when you've got a long multi-day hike, and also dragging the gear from Australia, your tents and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Oh.
You mentioned before that there's obviously this is a start and end trail. It's not a loop. And you said you went the opposite direction. So which direction did you travel and why?
We went what they call east to west. Really only because we wanted to end in Fethiye because
it's an easy ferry.
It was an easy ferry to the Greek island. So really that's why we did it that way. Doing it the other way, well, one, you've got the guidebook that's going in the right way, but our host that was organising for us said they do it the other way because it's first few days are shorter and it's easier to work yourself into it, whereas we started the other way and it was bang, we were just thrust into it. So we did it sort of what maybe in inverted commas of the harder way, but it was fine because the last probably 100 Ks were quite okay, weren't they? Last few days.
It was significantly shorter distances and elevation.
Yeah. But it was predominantly so we could get a ferry over to one of the Greek islands that we were ending. So really that, it was just dumb luck, really. No, that was the only reason.
All right. Now, speaking of going from Turkey to Greece, what was the visa situation? Did you need a visa, or how does that work?
No, we just got on the ferry and showed our passports.
Show your passport, pay your money, and get on the ferry.
Mm.
And what about getting into Turkey itself? Do you need a visa to get to Turkey?
Yeah.
Electronically.
But that's just pay the money and off you go.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good.
Advice for anybody doing that, there are multiple websites that will charge you extra money to get your visa. You don't need to use it. You can go straight through the Turkish government and save yourself €50.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Now, what time of the year did you travel and why?
Well, we did the walk in May. There was a couple of reasons. We had some family commitments earlier in April. If we were If you were just doing the walk, I would think April would be a good time. But we also wanted it to be a little bit warmer at the end, so we could spend some time
on a Greek island.
Having some swimming and things. So that was really why we did it in May. Probably a month earlier would have been a lot better, because we did end up having some really quite warm days. And as you know, walking in the heat's not fun. But that's why we started very early May and finished very, very early June. But the end of the season, ours was the last group to, they don't.
With our company.
Yeah, they don't. They won't. They won't take you after end of May or early June. June, July is too hot, and August I think is too hot to walk. So.
Yeah, no, I think I can understand that, and it's they want to cater for the busy period and not have one person turn up at a random time of the year. So they probably that's probably their holiday time off. So it does get pretty hot over there in summertime. So.
Oh, definitely, yes. Yeah, there would have been some very hot days, I think, if you went in a month later. In June,
well, they shut. Yeah. They had bushfires and shut places, shut airports and things like that after we left.
Yeah, no, I do remember. Every so often you hear about some serious bushfires in Turkey and Greece. So, yeah, it's a bit like doing some of the Australian trips. You don't do them in the middle of summer.
No, that's right.
Onto the trail experience itself. Paint us a picture of the overall terrain and vegetation and what the obvious changes were along the way.
Okay, so we started at the Antalya end. Massive limestone mountains, the West Taurus Mountains, I think they call them. A lot of up and down, through dry pine forest, I would say, for the first week of the walk. Very few people, some lovely meadow as well. Then you descend down onto the coast. Quite nice beaches. It's very hard to impress Australians with beaches, and I get it, they're not at all, but quite nice, lovely views of the water, and the water is that beautiful emerald colour, and turquoise. It's spectacular. There are some high olive grove sort of areas that you go through that the olive trees have been there planted by the Romans or whoever invaded the country before they did, and a lot of high plateau. There's a little bit of walking along beaches as well. There are ruins by multiple different civilizations along the way that you'll just walk by in a field, like sarcophagus piled up everywhere. Animals, not that many.
Mainly rural animals?
Goats, sheep, cows,
Yeah, sheep, goats, cows, horses.
But unusually, a lot of tortoises. So many tortoises. We found that quite amusing, didn't we?
Yeah, well, we don't
see. Yeah, they'd be often on the trail, nearly every day, depending on where you were. But, lots of tortoises, which was quite...
novel.
Yeah, novel.
Okay, yeah. Now, was there a favourite section of the trail from a vista perspective? Or it was pretty much something to see all the way along.
A lot of places there was stuff. There was a view, or a coastal view of islands or inlets on many days of it. Some days were like you were fully immersed in the mountain, and you descend onto beautiful creeks, and there were nice views of other mountains in the distance. So you've got mountain views, you've got coastal views, you've got views across high meadows and forests. It's really varied, and it does change along the way. Where we started, you're in like full limestone mountain country, and yet by the end, there's much more granite in that area, which is just a different stone, but there's different vegetation comes with it.
Okay. Now, in relation to still on the terrain, were there any big inclines and declines, or was it was a mixed sort of thing?
Yes, very much so. Yes, that was especially deep climbs, there was some beauties and inclines. There was some doozies.
And it depends on which way you went. Walking in Australia and on trails and going there, you shouldn't go, it's 20 kilometres, it's going to take me 5 hours to walk that.
Yep.
It could well take you 10 or 11 hours to walk that because of the terrain. Days of 1,200 metres plus elevation, 1,400 metres, 1,200 up, 1,400 down, occurred along the way. But equally, there were days that were shorter and had significantly less. But
there was a lot of up and down.
And rough trail.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's always interesting. You sort of think, it's going to be flat or it's going to be this on that, and then as you say, there's some big inclines and big declines, and as long as you have a bit of a mixture, I don't mind that too much.
No, it was a good mixture, really.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. There was nowhere that was really frightening, but there were quite a few very steep parts of trail that were right on the edge.
I wouldn't say there were some areas that weren't for the faint-hearted, I would think.
Yeah. Well put.
No, that's fair enough. Are you a fair weather hiker? Well, maybe it's time to think outside the box. Canberra-based outdoor company Adventure Gene is now running snow camping tours through the Australian Alps that will teach you snow camping and snowshoeing skills, and at the same time provide a unique and authentic wilderness experience. These trips are primarily aimed at people who have some hiking experience and are looking to try out winter travel under the care of enthusiastic, friendly and professional guides that focus on quality service in small groups. In addition to having an amazing trip, Adventure Dream trips include the use of world-class gear, great food and four-wheel drive transport to make your winter adventure as seamless as possible. So if you're looking at getting outdoors and doing something just that little bit different, then maybe a snow camping trip from Adventure Gene is the way to go. Now, describe a typical day on the trail, sort of from waking up to going to bed.
Well, typically Peter and I are quite early birds and we like to get away, but our hosts wouldn't provide usually breakfast till 8. So we would get up and be organised straight to breakfast at 8 o'clock. Pretty much 8 was the standard, wasn't it? I mean, I think there was one or two that was 7:30 and one might have been 8:30, but on average. So we would be already packed up, ready to go and have our breakfast. So 8:45, by the time we came back and cleaned our teeth and said goodbye, we'd be on the trail. And we would, depending on the terrain though, we like to have a break every 1.5, 2 hours, check our feet and sit down and have a rest. And then we would do that during the day, and then end of day, depending on, as Pete just said, with the distance, it could have only been 15 kilometres, but it took us 8 hours, So we would, our days were from 5 to 9 hours or 10 hours, I think, was our biggest one. So we would be in generally by 4 or 5, yeah. And then, again, what time dinner was would dictate bed, and then we'd be in bed. So, again, Pete and I early to bed. So we'd be in bed by 8:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30. So never after 8:30. So that was the day, and then ready to do it again.
It's interesting. I think that time of the year you're coming into summer, so you've probably got the longer days, and if it does allow you time to go through. And if you want to have a stop and have a swim on the beach, you're generally not pushing yourselves. I mean, no. I was going to say, I know this would have varied, but was there a typical distance that you tried to cover, or it was really dictated by where you were staying at night time?
Yes, it was. We knew that we were staying in, X, so that's how far we walked. So whether it was we wanted to or we didn't, that's what we did. So, but it was all manageable. There wasn't many days that we couldn't have gone on any further.
And how many days did it take you to do this trip?
We did 28
walking days.
28. We had 2 days. Our the tour people suggested 4 days, but we only took 2 days off, our scheduled days off. So So yeah, we walked for, what did you say, 28 days?
28 days.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's not a bad trip, and it's and as you say, the distance is one thing, but it doesn't tell you what the terrain's like. So if it was 28 days of dead flat walking with no impediments, then it would have been a really easy walk. But yeah, you obviously had a bit of a mixture of everything. So
Definitely.
okay, now from your perspective, were there any negatives on this trip?
The negatives for me probably were the maintenance of the trail in some areas was non-existent, and the waymarking was again non-existent, and so there was a lot of, and I don't know whether it was just the time of year, but we had a lot of thorn bushes and holly bushes that we quite overgrown, so it was a little bit nasty at times, scratching and things. So that was, for me, that was really the only negative. It was the trail itself was a little bit tricky to navigate. Pete's the navigator, so not that affected me, but for him,
it was. Look, there were just a couple of sections that went for quite a while where trail maintenance wasn't great, and as Natalie said, it could have been just that it was the end of spring and things were growing, but there was thornbush and hollybush that had invaded the trail, and it was quite difficult to actually pick out the trail. And anywhere that there's new development, it'll come across the trail, and the trail. One day the trail, we're going up a mountain, and the trail just ended in a rock wall that had been built for me. It was 400 yards either way you had to go around this property, and then you had to find your way back to the trail.
We've had that on a few occasions, so I think that's probably the worst part of it. The navigation was a little bit tricky at times.
That's good.
And trail maintenance, but there were only a couple of areas around that were like that. In general, you were able to pick up the trail, and if you followed the GPX, and even if you didn't see a marker, you knew basically where the trail was, you could find it. Now, that might involve scrambling up a hill or down a hill to get to it, but you could do it.
And again, I suppose in relation to the guidebook, as you say, if the guidebook was written 20-odd years ago, there obviously would be some changes. And having something that says, hey, there's a wall here, this is what you've got to do, just takes a lot of the anxiety out of it, rather than, okay, which way do I go? Do I go right and pick the wrong way and got to come back again, or do I go left and that's the right way? So
it probably would have been nice to have, I mean, I said that a few times, a few trip notes, I guess, like the Cape to Cape, you'd get, some trip notes, but I understand the difficulty of that for them. But in the end, I mean, and I'm a little bit of an organised person. I like to know what's coming, but in the end, it was just every day. Okay, throw it at me. What's going to happen today? So you just adapted. But I personally would have liked, as you said, Tim, just a few trip notes to say, yes, well, the trail will go this way, but at the moment there's a new development, so you'll have to go X way. So, but anyway, there wasn't. So.
All right, now going the opposite way, what were the highlights of this trip? What were the things you really came away with thinking, this is a really wonderful track?
I think the views were spectacular. The cultural, the food, the welcomeness of the Turkish people were pretty wonderful too. What else did we
look, I really liked a place called, and my pronunciation will be poor, but Goynuk Canyon. I thought that part of the walk was spectacular, and not the part where they're set up for tourists and there's a little lake. Not that part, but the part from there towards Antalya, from there on, was spectacular. The forest areas and the rivers were really beautiful too. The fact that it was quiet and there were no people, I really enjoyed most of the time, because I could just walk along in solitude. Now, Tim, I like people, but sometimes I just like it when they're not around. And we had that, there were people, and there were other times when there was nobody around, and it was very special.
Mm.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Okay, so if someone was looking at doing this trail, who would you recommend it for in relation to, the ability and level of experience? Probably the main thing.
Look, we saw quite a few people doing it by themselves. I personally wouldn't like to do it by myself. It's nice to bounce, especially when you're trying to navigate. Also, I wouldn't have liked to have done that as my first multi-day hike. I think it would have been a little bit of a challenge because it is a challenging walk. It is, at times it is challenging for the reasons that we've said, the markings and the bushes and. But as long as you're reasonably fit and you're a walker,
fitness is certainly something that
you
can't
need.
be understated, particularly probably the direction we did it, where you're doing like longer days with more elevation first up. The fitter you are, the better you will handle it.
Yeah. But we felt very safe. I wouldn't have any safety concerns at all.
I think you basically said one day that you'd be happy to do it. We girls, you felt very, very safe.
Yeah. So I think anybody that had done a little bit of walking before, I think, and was reasonably fit, I think you really would need to do some, like for that, most of those multi-day things, you need to do some training.
No, that's fair enough, and I think that's often the thing that people get a picture in their mind about how romantic it is, and then 600 kilometres later, it's like, oh, I didn't really expect this.
That wasn't so romantic. Having a reasonable amount of fitness, and we knew that there was going to be a lot of up and down, so we did. We usually do.
Yeah, we
train a fair bit if we've got a big trip like that coming up. So yes, I wouldn't like to not have done any training, and I wouldn't have liked to do that as my first multi-day hike. But anybody else, that would enjoy the experience of the culture and the vistas.
Okay,
highly recommend.
All right, no, that's good. Now, one final question: what's the next great hiking adventure?
I'm looking at Japan, the Kamuna Koda, I think it was called. It's one of the pilgrimage routes.
Yep.
In Japan. Pete wants to go to New Zealand in early next year, so we might
go and do a bike ride and some hiking around Wanaka.
Yeah. So just starting on that, starting that little process now. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, look, 1,200 kilometres in Japan versus something slightly shorter in New Zealand. Is going to be a hard one to pick.
In the meantime, we still do. We come down to Jindabyne once a year, so we normally in December, early December, we come down and have a week down there and do some day trips. So that'll be our next little trip down your way. And we love Bright in Victoria, same thing. So, the overseas, the next big one will be yet to be decided.
Okay, that's good. We've been talking with Natalie and Pete Cornford about hiking the Lycian Way in Turkey. Natalie, Pete, thank you for taking the time to talk with us about your adventure.
You're very welcome.
Thanks again for having us.
So that was our interview with Natalie and Pete Cornford on their adventure on the Lycian Way in Turkey. One of the things that surprised me over the last year is coming across a lot of these walks, which, and again, the term I use is they're secondary walks. They're not the Pacific Crest Trail, they're not the Camino Francis, but they're a level down that may not be as familiar to people as the internationally known walks, but in some respects that's an advantage because there's a lot of undiscovered walks, for want of a better term, that are out there that aren't overcrowded.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it, to hear about them? It's kind of like the world's number twos.
It is. So the key things that I picked up from that interview, and one of them was they said that early on in the podcast episode that they chose to try to do this walk backwards. Now, there is no front, forward and backwards on this, but there is a recommended direction, mainly because you start off at the easier end of the trail and you've built up your fitness before you hit the harder section of the trail.
Yeah.
And they went the opposite, and that was deliberate from their perspective. When we asked them why they did that, it was because they wanted to go to the Greek Isles after the trip, and it just means finishing in what is technically the start of the trail. It means they could get on a ferry and travel over quite easily. So it was more from that perspective. But I think otherwise they probably have, if you're not planning on doing that, they may well have done it the other way. So you've got the ability and the option to do this walk in either direction. Something was reinforced with this interview, as along with some of the previous interviews we've done over the last few months, is in Europe, if you're going to a homestay situation, breakfast seems to be around about 8 o'clock in most cases. So I know in my case, providing it's not pitch black, I'm normally trying to be on the trail by 7:30 if I can.
Yeah, that's right.
They were saying they're early risers as well, so they'd get packed. So all they had to do was have breakfast, go and do their teeth, and then they could head off from there. So they were pretty much organised. But if you're, as I said, if you're like me, or if you're an early starter, sometimes it's like I need to get going. But they certainly had plenty of time to get to the next destination, so it wasn't really an issue in that respect.
I think that's the other thing, though. When you're in a different country and you're wanting to experience a lot more than just the walking, those things around the social aspects of, an 8 o'clock breakfast, a late start breakfast, they're important to experience because that's the point of being there.
Now, they were saying that the distance was pretty much dictated by the accommodation, and in this instance here, this was very much for want of a better term, glamping. They were staying in homestays, and on a few of the days they were staying in hotels as well. But that's what they wanted to do, and that's a perfectly valid option. And they did say they came across people, particularly younger people, that were tenting it.
Yeah, that's right.
But you've got the ability to do one or the other, or a combination of both, depending on the experience that you want. And I think this is the thing, there's not just one way. And again, the saying is hike your own hike. And really, whatever gets you out there is got to be applauded. But so the distances tended to vary depending on where the accommodation was. And again, I suppose that would be the advantage of, if you are camping, you can choose to go on or stop short. You're not tied to going to a particular location if you're not feeling up to it, or you're having a really good day and you're pressing on and doing a bit more.
I think it's probably the difference between just taking it as it comes and planning. If you're going to be staying in different places, presumably in some cases you'd have to book, versus if you were tenting, then, you can just go, oh, this is a great place. You can just go, this is just a great spot to stop for the night. I'll stop here.
One of the things that I hadn't heard before but makes sense is the use of Google Translate. So this is in a rural or away from the big cities, if you like. They were saying that a lot of the locals weren't necessarily aware of this trail. The trail's been around for a number of years, but people just are still getting used to it, and the tourists are still finding it. So I must admit, in that respect, if you want to do something that's away from the crowds, this is not a bad option to go for. But they were saying, particularly the older Turkish residents, their English wasn't so good. The younger ones and the kids, their English was a bit better, but they did make use of Google Translate on their phones. And that's one of the advantages of technology these days. You might be able to, as they said, they learnt the good morning and good afternoon and good night and thank you and hello sort of thing that most people tend to learn.
Anything a little bit more complex,
Yeah.
You need a translator.
And they did say they pointed at a lot of things, but certainly...
And you speak it louder too. That's what you do.
Yeah, speak it louder, or you yell just to get it across. But having the ability to use something like Google Translate to be able to pick up what somebody else is saying, and also for you to get your message across, is quite handy. They identified some negatives on the trip, and in no particular order through here. They said the waymarking was a bit lacking in some spaces. And again, the waymarking for this trail is a red and white painted mark on the rocks and things like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
And
don't miss the rock.
No, and there is a guidebook for this trip, but the guidebook is getting a bit dated and probably needs to be redone again. Because what they were saying is people have gone through and built in houses and things in certain areas, and and
doesn't quite look the same.
No, well, it doesn't quite look the same. They gave an example of coming across an area where someone had put in a 200-metre rock wall that they had to go one way or the other, and it was trying to work out which way they go. So this is the thing. The guidebook. It'd be good if someone's enthusiastic, if the author wants to redo it, or someone else wants to redo this walk, just to update it, just to make it easier for the next people coming along. They did say there was a bit of overgrowth on some of the trails, some of the thorn bushes, and that made the trail a bit tricky to navigate. But they said that could have been because it was late in the season. And again, it's the sort of thing that this is a relatively new trail, so it probably hasn't got the infrastructure in relation to people coming and maintaining it or volunteers maintaining it. So it's something that it is what it is, and it's not a big issue. Water carry was pretty much something they did every day, and Pete and Natalie are both bladder users, and they said they would basically take water from their accommodation, and that would last them usually for the day, although they did say they had a couple of days where the last 2 to 3 kilometres they didn't have any water.
Ran a bit short, yeah.
But they were saying they did the trail slightly late in the season. Now, if you've been to the Mediterranean before, you'll know that it can be scorching hot in the middle of summertime. So, we'll talk about doing the walks at certain times of the year. But certainly, if you do plan on doing it in the middle of summer, you're going to need a lot more water and have to carry a lot more water.
Yeah.
But in most cases, they did well. And they said they could have picked up water from streams, but they didn't choose to do that. And they did carry tablets with them to sterilise the water, but didn't end up using them. The positives for this trip for them, they said, and again, Pete apologised for his pronunciation, and I'm certainly going to do the same. The highlight seems to be Ganook Canyon. They both said it was just really spectacular scenery. The culture, the views, and if you have a look at the cover image for the show notes for this podcast, they're up on top of a high hill looking down on the ocean. And again, in this part of the Mediterranean, you get that aquamarine bluey sort of waters. Blue.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
And I did ask them about that, and I said, they did have some beach walking, or they'd come in and out of little bays and beaches occasionally. And I said, did you do some swimming? And they said definitely. So, unless you're in a hurry to get where you're going and doing big distances, being able to stop for an hour or half an hour and have a swim, have a bit of a break before you press on. And I must admit, I've been to the Mediterranean. My father's worked over there many years ago, and I got to go over there during holidays, and I just love that area. It is really nice. There's no doubt about it. They said that the forests were quite good. So, again, this is a trail that's roughly around about 509 kilometres, but the distance seems to vary. I've seen distances, say 509 kilometres, some saying 540-odd kilometres, but it's somewhere between 500 and 550, and that really is going to depend on if you do any extras or doing a bit more travelling around. So, use the 540, 550 as a guide, but it may not actually cover that depending on what you're doing. And I think, because it is such a big distance, you're getting quite a variety. You're getting hills, you're getting beaches, you're getting ocean views, you're getting forests, and some of the images they've provided, which we've put onto the show notes on the Australian Hiker website, just give a good indication. And they did mention the culture, that you're going through a number of World Heritage ancient cities.
That's right.
Or what's left of the ancient cities.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, it just provides something we're just not used to in Australia as far as built infrastructure. We certainly have the heritage in this country, but it's, major cities and things like that is what we don't have. And I think going through that part of the world where people were building large buildings and building cities and structures like that, 1,000 odd years ago, and 2,000 years ago, it's quite amazing. They did like the solitude, but that can be a bit of a plus and minus. If you're travelling just with one other person or by yourself, it may be a bit too much solitude for you. But again, I'm a bit of a fan of. I don't mind talking to people, but I also don't mind hiking by myself either. So really, it depends on the experience you want. They said they did their trip a bit later in the season as they were getting in towards summer. So I think basically spring and autumn are probably going to be the two
busier.
times.
Yeah.
And avoiding the heat in midsummer. And I'd probably avoid the midwinter as well. It's surprising how cold it can get in that part of the world. Now, they indicated that this trip is pretty much for anyone that's into long-distance hiking as long as they have the fitness, because they said they had some days where you were going up 1,400 metres and coming down 1,200 metres.
That's awesome, isn't it? So
it's the sort of thing that they wouldn't recommend this as a first long-distance hike. Mind you, their first long-distance hike was the Camino Frances. They were certainly used to doing the longer distances. But if you're not into long-distance hiking or you haven't done long-distance hike before, maybe leave it and do some others that are a bit easier first before you pick this one up. My overall comments for this walk is one of these ones that has the ability to be a bit of a choose-your-own adventure, starting in the east or starting in the west, doing it at different times of the year, doing it solo, doing it in a couple or in groups, and you'll get the experience that you want, and doing it camping or doing it staying in homestays and motels. So it gives you the ability to pick and choose. I'm also, as I mentioned, a big fan of the Mediterranean and the climate and the culture there, so that's always a plus for me. And as I said, the walk is a bit more solitary. You're not going to come across a lot of people, but I've talked to a number of people recently who have mentioned the Lycian Way, and it seems to be a trail that is picking up speed as far as people knowing it exists and having the ability to go through and do this trail. And I think one of the things that they mentioned was Natalie said that she would be happy to do this as a group of women. She just felt safe on the trail.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a completely different kind of hike to some of the other hikes we've been interviewing people about recently, and some of those others are pretty busy and pretty full on. This one doesn't seem to be that way at this point. So hopefully it'll still be, a little bit of a adventure and not too much like a parade with lots of people, because I think the Camino can get a little bit like that.
Okay, that's all for this episode, brought to you by the Adventure Gene. We hope you've enjoyed, and we hope it's enthused you to maybe think a bit outside the box rather than sticking to the main trails when you want something a bit different in the Europe/Mediterranean area. That's all for me. Bye for now.
And bye from me.